Hello, friends. Lee C. Camp here. You're listening to No Small Endeavor. This is our unabridged interview with Allison Russell. Allison is a Grammy winner, 8-time Grammy nominee. She's an artist, actress, activist, and an all-around lovely human being. We got to be with Allison to work with her on the big end-of-year show we did last year at the Schermerhorn Symphony Hall here in Nashville, end of last year. And as you'll hear me say in the interview, there was one point in particular where Allison had asked several of us to sing with her, and I was so moved by what was happening, I could hardly find my place because I was so moved, emotionally moved, and was tearing up listening to her performance. But this is a lovely interview. She welcomed us to their home, she and her partner JT, to their home there in East Nashville, and we had a lovely conversation. One of the things that I especially have taken away from that interview is that she and I stood in the hallway after the tape had been stopped. And I think she says this in the actual interview itself, but I know she said it standing there in the hallway, that things can be different. And I think that's one of the beauties of what art and artists do for us, is that they remind us that things can be different and that we can choose to use our autonomy and our work in the world, our creativity in the world, to make a contribution towards constructive change of the things that we think should be different and we want to be different. So lots of jewels in this interview. Hope you enjoy. Here's Allison Russell. Hello, friends. Lee C. Camp here. There is, as you may have noticed, no shortage of content in the world. Opinions, endless, outrage, plentiful. Deep wisdom and thoughtful perspective, slightly harder to come by. That's part of why we created the NSC Notebook. It's our weekly email from the world of No Small Endeavor with reflections on a good life, behind-the-scenes insight into our interviews, and quotes that stuck with me long after those conversations ended. You'll also get a curated list of what I'm reading, watching, and listening to, books, movies, music, and other things I think are actually worth your time. It comes to your inbox every Tuesday, completely free. So if you'd like one less thing to doom scroll and one more thing to actually enjoy, sign up for the NSC Notebook at nosmallendeavor.com.
Hi, friends. It's Annie F. Downs here, and I am so beyond excited to share with you that I have a brand new TV show called I Gotta Ask that begins airing Thursday, May 28th on The Wonder Project, which you can find through your Amazon Prime Video app. You may have heard of The Wonder Project because they're the ones who brought you The House of David, and I am so honored and honestly have zero chill that I get to partner with them to make this dream come true. I love how Wonder Project is not only creating great original TV and movies that audiences can experience together, but also curating content via their subscription on Prime Video filled with meaningful stories. The first 2 episodes of my talk show, I Gotta Ask, premiere on May 28th, followed by 2 episodes each on June 4th and June 11th. In every episode, I sit down with a group of friends, some experts in their fields and some thought leaders, some just my real life people. And we talk about things like, why is dating so hard in 2026? Or how do I build a business? What do I do with fear and anxiety? And so many more questions that I just had to ask. I cannot wait to hear what you think. You can subscribe today at igottaask.com.
When Laura and I had 3 young boys running around, we cared a lot about what our kids were eating. But like every parent, we learned pretty quickly that good intentions have to fit into real life. You want your kids getting the nutrients they need, but you also want to avoid all the extra sugar, artificial ingredients, and things you can't even pronounce. That's one reason I like Hiya. Unlike a lot of kids' vitamins that are basically candy in disguise, Hiya's chewable multivitamin is made with 0 sugar, 0 gummy additives, and no artificial junk. It includes a blend of organic fruits and vegetables plus essential vitamins and minerals like vitamin D, C, zinc, folate, and B12. And what's fun is you get a reusable bottle with stickers in your first order, and then they send refills every month. And Hiya just launched another exciting initiative, Kids Daily Growth Plus Protein. It's a clean protein powder with added minerals and healthy fats designed specifically for growing kids. Just mix it into water, milk, or a smoothie to help support muscle development, cognition, and all the energy kids need for their busy days. We've worked out a special deal with Hiya. Receive 50% off your first order on any of their products. To claim this deal, you must go to hiyahealth.com/NSC. Distill's not available on their regular website. Go to HIYAHEALTH.com/NSE and get your kids the full body support they deserve. Allison Russell.
Lee.
It's great to see you again.
Great to see you too.
Thanks for having us here to your home.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Yeah.
You're very welcome.
Lovely to get to be with you here on this beautiful Nashville day.
Yeah, it's perfect weather.
Yes. You've been writing a memoir.
I have been writing a memoir. Yes, I have.
So I'm wondering if you have if you've developed any sort of favorite metaphor for trying to describe the process of writing a memoir.
It's like being a ghost in your own life. That's how I feel about it.
Say more about that.
It's like the ghost of, it's very Dickensian, I think. It's like you're all the ghosts. You're the ghosts of the past, the future, and it's sometimes difficult to stay rooted in the present, I think, in the midst of it. You're excavating you're an archaeologist in your own life, basically. And I don't know if I know how to do it. It's my first time attempting it. My first record under my own name was called Outside Child. And it is a fairly autobiographical record. And this memoir grew out of that record. The reason I'm writing it at all is because my wonderful publicist, Meg Helsell, has a best friend, Meg Thompson, who is a literary agent. And Meg Thompson got obsessed with the Outside Child album and the fact that in her ears it was already 3/4 of the way to being a memoir.
Yeah.
And she asked me if I would consider writing a book proposal. And I did it almost as an exercise because I liked her so much. Basically anything my publicist Meg asks of me, I'm willing to attempt because she's one of the people I trust the most in the music industry and in the world and in life. She's just a wonderful human being, and Meg Thompson is equally wonderful. And so I did it almost writing the book proposal as an exercise, but then it got snapped up in a preempt. And suddenly there's the reality of now you have to write a book. You were contractually obligated to write this book. And I'm obviously it's such a privileged problem.
Right.
But it has fallen it's very internal work. And what I've found is that it's really difficult to balance that with the much more external work of performance, of music performance, of Broadway, of mothering, of showing up in community, in real life. What I've found is it's been a bit of a struggle between those modalities,
Are you finding in that process, it seems to me, I've read memoirs in which there seems to be some sort of centering metaphor or recurring motif that kind of holds it all together. And then others I've read who just seem to be much more content or at ease with just telling a story without feeling a need to try to necessarily even give it coherence and just let the story land on their reader. I don't know. What's kind of your approach for the way you're approaching this?
I mean, I don't know that I can even answer that fully yet because I'm still in process. But one of the things that's emerging from this memoir is stories of mothers and daughters. And, I am a mother now myself. So, and going back kind of through the matriarchy of my own people has been something that's come up. I didn't meet my Black family until I was 30 years old. And so I've been kind of excavating that side of things and tracing back as far as I can on the paternal side, because of course those of us from the African diaspora that were brought against our will to these various shores, to the Caribbean, to the US, everywhere. It's hard a lot of the history is lost, of course, but my family's been able to trace as far back as a woman named Kashiba who was sold off what at the time was called the Gold Coast of Ghana and survived the Middle Passage and made her way to Trinidad and then to Grenada and founded our my paternal line, my father's side. So I've been really, some of the memoir is, actually a lot of the memoir is to do with the relationships that carry us that we didn't even know we had. And also the power of imagination and the importance of, in my life, of art in surviving it all, and of free public art. I was really lucky to grow up in Montreal, where there is ample free public art. We have the Festival International de Jazz de Montréal. We have Caravana, and we have incredible public museums and libraries that are free to students. And, well, libraries, of course, are always free, but the Musée des Beaux-Arts and all of those places, the Place des Arts are open and free to students. And so I was just very lucky to grow up in that city.
So I've already got 3 or 4 follow-up questions, but before we go to some of those, let me back up to childhood for a moment.
Yeah.
It's conventional wisdom often that some of the things that we do later in life are obviously rooted with some of our childhood experiences. And so I wonder for you, the manner in which music, making music, performing music, writing music has been so central to you. How do you locate that in your childhood experience?
I think I was always writing. I mean, music is, my first memories are of music. My mom is a really beautiful piano player. And we had a very troubled relationship. And she was very young when she had me. She was a child herself and, teenage mom. And I grew up, I was taken from her care when she was very young and placed in foster care, but we would have visits. I would be allowed to visit my mom on weekends. And I can't think, maybe it was 2 weekends a month or something. But those are the most vivid memories. And we would go to my grandma's house, which I now realize is probably because she had to be under supervision. So we would go to my grandma's house, and my grandma had a piano, and I would listen to my mom play piano. I mean, those are my strongest, earliest memories. And she would play along to her favorite albums, to Joni Mitchell, and, she loved Ladies of the Canyon and Clouds. And I remember hiding under the piano and listening to her play along and watching her feet on the pedals. And it's like a sensory, it's more than auditory. I could, it was like I could feel it and see it. And music was just very alive to me. And when relationships were difficult, or when communication was difficult with words, that was just very clear to me on a sort of sublingual level, how just comforting music was,
Any memories of the earliest song you remember her playing?
I remember her. Yeah, I mean, I remember her playing along to the whole Ladies of the Canyon record. And I remember the song For Free because that was the first time I heard the clarinet. There's a coda at the end of that song, this beautiful clarinet coda. It's a beautiful, it's Joni sort of musing on, here she is, this popular singer, and she hears a man busking on the clarinet in the street and has the thought to go sing with him, but the light changes and life goes on, and off she goes. But it's a beautiful kind of timeless melody. I slept last night in a good hotel. I went shopping today for jewels. The wind rushed around in the dirty town, and the children let out from the schools. I was standing on a noisy corner, waiting for the walking green. Across the street he stood, and he played real good on his clarinet for free. And at the end of that song, there's this gorgeous coda, the busker playing the clarinet. And I remember being like electrified by the sound of the clarinet, And then a full circle all these years later, I play clarinet in Joni Mitchell's band, So
amazing.
Yeah.
What a full circle.
It was always, music was always there. My grandma was was a Scottish Presbyterian and sang in the church choir, and played piano too, but loved to sing and always had the radio going or CDs that she loved and would just sing all the time. And she knew also a wealth of creepy, violent lullabies and murder ballads and things from the old country from Scotland that I adored.
There are some
they're amazing.
Vicious, yeah.
But also I think of them as the hidden canon. You know, they are, again, going back, part of what is in the memoir, these things that are passed down on matrilineally that don't get recorded sort of, they're not part of the Western canon. They're not, but they are feeding all of that.
Yeah.
And that is this oral tradition that, and women's stories and histories that have been carried forward, the anonymous, distilled experiences of generations, you know, and oftentimes it's dealing with violence, it's dealing with broken homes, it's dealing with abusive women, you know, which I was living and my mother was living. There's something very powerful about that, you know, these songs that are like little roadmaps for how to navigate it.
When you think back about, you talked about Montreal and the richness of the riches of the art and the music. What are some ways that Montreal kind of provided you some sort of solace, some sort of protection in those difficult years?
I mean, it was constant. So I left home very young. I left home when I was just shy of 15. And in another city, I don't know that I would have survived that experience. But in Montreal, we had, especially at the time, you know, this was pre-COVID, and there were a lot of 24-hour cafes and things. I went to an alternative high school right downtown. It was a school called Mind, Moving in New Directions. And it was in one wing it was a tiny little alternative school. There was only 150 kids in the whole school from grades 9 to 11, which are your senior years in Montreal. The way the Quebec system works, primary school is K through 6, and then high school is 7 through 11. And then you do either 1 year or 2 years of cégep, or it's like a junior college, basically here, I think it would be called. And then university as per usual, if one goes on to that. And my little alternative school was across the street from McGill University, so right downtown, in one wing of a larger arts high school called FACE, which was sort of our Montreal, Quebec version of FAME, you know, the FAME high school. Our little alternative school is just one wing of that. And I would, you know, we were sort of situated between what the neighborhood known as the quartier known as McGill Ghetto and Saint Laurent and Mile End. So I would go sit at Café Croissant Royal and play chess until, 6 a.m. with the McGill students. You know, there would be like poli-sci students playing chess till late in the night there, and I would go play chess. I would, there was the Marie Reine du Monde, this little basilica close to my school that was open early and open late, and that had all kinds of little nooks and crannies with velvet cushions where I would go sleep and pretend I was praying, and like go sleep there. In the summertime, we had the cimetière à Montréal is this gorgeous cemetery that's like, that was incredibly safe late at night, where I would sleep in the cemetery in the summertime.
Wow.
I would go to our Jazz Fest is it's the largest jazz fest in the world, actually, the Montreal Jazz Fest. And it goes for a month long from usually mid-June through mid-July. And a whole downtown streets are cut off from automobiles. They become pedestrian streets. And it's just free concerts, all day long. Like there are some that you pay for, but the main mise en scène, the main stage is free. And lots of the other concerts in different parks are free. I would go to those shows. I would go to Shakespeare in the Park. We had free repertory theater I just was constantly having it reinforced to me that there were other ways to live. You know, when my particular nuclear family was unbearable and dangerous and violent, I got the glimmer that it didn't have to be that way because of all of the amazing kind of alternative possibilities that I was seeing in these other places, you know, and yeah, that really fed my young spirit and enabled me to and I was lucky to have an alternative high school like that, where I would show up early in the morning, an hour before school started, and just go sleep in our school lounge. And nobody asked me questions. They just took care of me, you know?
How many years was that you were living that way?
Really precariously like that, I would say about half a year. And then I moved in with some other girls in my high school. We got a little apartment on Dubouillon Street. And one of them was sort of emancipating herself from her parents, who lived about an hour outside of the city, and she wanted to be in the city and had started a job. She got a job with actually our first celebrity of our school, where she got a hosting job for this kind of teen after school show. I think it was called Street Sense, and she would do interviews. And anyway, she got this gig. And so that was part of the impetus for her. She needed to be in town and not go back and forth. So I lived with 3 other girls from my school, Allie and Siobhan and Kim, and we called our apartment the Womb, and it became a hub for all of our little misfit friends, you know. And we all kind of grew each other up there and figured out how to do things like go grocery shopping and cook. And
so you're how old when you move in with those girls?
16 when I moved in with the girls. Yeah. So and then we had each other, and we still have each other to this day. We're still really close, all of us.
What a gift!
Yeah, they all came to my last run of Hadestown. We had a big reunion. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
When you think back to that, especially 6-month season of precarity, any particular individuals, their kindness or presence stand out in your memory?
Yes, my first girlfriend, Persephone. You know, she was really she was a force of stability and unconditional love, and accepting me as I was, and an emotional stabilizing. I think I would have been hard pressed to get through that time without her. Yeah. And I would also sneak into her basement window and stay overnights at her place sometimes. Yeah.
When you think back, you were talking a moment ago about tracing back family lineage, and at least implicitly pointing to the kind of systemic structures that have then in time borne down on you individually. And, you know, obviously as a white man, when I do that kind of work, it looks very, very different. But Alabamian, and one of the things that I did through decades of teaching as a professor was I would do a lot of research reading, take students on trips back to Alabama, Mississippi, Tuskegee, Selma, Jackson, Memphis. And we would just try to read, learn, understand. And one of the things that I began to realize was how little I think I knew about myself until I started doing that kind of work. And it was through that kind of historical work that I began to have a fuller sense of who I was and who I had come from.
Yeah.
Both for good and obviously for ill in various ways.
Yeah.
But how would you say that doing your own sort of historical work has helped you have a greater sense of who you are?
I mean, I think that all of us, every single person in this so-called new world, you know, that's not indigenous, we're immigrants. And a lot of us are fairly new immigrants. We're very new. I mean, I'm obviously a new immigrant to America. I'm a Canadian. But to understand that, like, we are part of a much greater human story of migration or forced displacement, and resilience, that there's a deep resilience in all of our lineages, whatever they are. It doesn't matter, whatever our differences and whatever our lineages, if you trace back even a few generations, your ancestors, everyone's ancestors, have endured times far harder than these. And I think it's really easy for us to get into, particularly at times of deep social and political and economic fracture, it's easy to fall into a kind of apathetic, nihilistic despair, sort of negativity bias response to it all. And I think when we do any kind of deep diving into ourselves as part of a lineage, as a culmination of a lineage or a continuance of a lineage, it prevents that because we start to realize people have endured and lived through and overcome far harder and far worse. And so, we need to continue that and not succumb to despair, and I do think it's helpful in that way. And it's helpful to realize how interconnected we actually all are. Nobody's one thing.
Yeah.
People think they are and they're not.
Right.
They have all this, some people are very, very fearful of what they consider other. And it's simply because they haven't done enough excavation work on their own history. There was a very interesting, I remember there was, I'm forgetting his name, but there was this sort of a famous white supremacist I'm forgetting even where he was from, but he was just a sort of virulently vocal white supremacist. And something prompted, he was challenged to do his own DNA testing. And of course, he's like 33% sub-Saharan African, And he was like, I didn't believe it. It's a lie. It's all a lie. But that was the truth of his genetic makeup, And that is exactly these sorts of things, like the surface knee-jerk, fear-based kind of divide and conquer clubs don't stand a chance against real genealogical deep digs. That's what I'm gonna say. Once people realize the truth of that we are in fact one human species, deeply interconnected. If you trace us back far enough, we share a mother, that it just kind of like lays to rest all of that nonsense pretty quickly. And I do think that there is, there is power in understanding that we come from these long lines of resilient survivors, and very creative problem solvers, and that we are that too.
Yeah. You said that you first met your Black family when you were 30? Mm-hmm. Yeah. How did that come about?
So my mom and my biological father and my mother met at a high school in Montreal called Montreal High, which no longer exists. But my mom's older brother, David, remembered my father. And when I was starting to get curious about my own genealogy, partially because my partner, JT, and I were getting more serious, and I knew that he wanted kids. I didn't think I would ever be a mother. But I thought, well, I should at least find out, and in my mind, it was like, it's just genetic curiosity to know health things on that side. Or I didn't even dare to kind of like imagine being in relationship with that person, even if I should find them. I didn't assume that we would be in relationship, I just I wanted to know whatever I could find out, almost more like physiologically almost, And my uncle had dated a girl that was at the same, went to the same church, I guess, as one of my aunts by marriage. And he found her number. The Grenadian community is small. There's only about 350,000 Grenadians in the whole world. Grenada is, which is where my biological father is from, is a tiny, three tiny islands really: Grenada, Petit Martinique, and Carriacou. And they are the most southerly of the Windward Islands, and they're about 70 nautical miles off the coast of Trinidad, and they're tiny, and they were hotly contested by France and England, and England won out. But there's a strong French history and influence on the island. So a lot of Grenadians went to Quebec for that reason, where they were bilingual as well, and went to Quebec for schooling, because at the time, Caribbean schools weren't, any accreditation you got there wasn't acknowledged, in Canada or in the US, or that's changing. My Aunt June, actually, my eldest uncle Herbert's wife, is a maths professor at the University of West Indies in Trinidad, and has been a big part of developing relationships with Western universities and having the degrees be acknowledged and all of that. So that's changed for Caribbean students now. But at the time, they had to go, if they wanted to better themselves through education, they had to go abroad. And so they went, my father, as a teen, went to Montreal to live with his older siblings and studied at Monkland High School, met my mom. They had a young relationship. He was back in Grenada before she even realized she was pregnant. So I had never met him. And my uncle David was able to find this old girlfriend who was also Grenadian, and through the Grenadian pipeline, which is tiny and convoluted and interconnected, she found a paternal aunt of mine. And then I got a call from my biological father about 2 weeks later. And I happened to be doing my last days of work in the downtown east side in Vancouver. I used to work for a nonprofit housing society called the Portland Hotel Society. And I was covering a shift for a friend who was also cooking for the residents, and I was not a cook. And so I was on one line with my maternal Aunt Barb, freaking out and figuring out how to make a roast for this group of people. and I get a call on the other line, and it's my biological father. And
amazing.
It's like, I'm so happy to hear from you. Can I call you back? I have to finish this meal for these people, So yeah, and that's how it began. And I was in a band, playing in a band called Pogirl at the time, and we were touring all the time. And I remember meeting them for the first time we had done a show at the now defunct Michigan Women's Fest in outside of Grand Rapids or somewhere in Michigan. And then we were going to play the Montreal Jazz Fest for the first time. And we stopped in Toronto on the way, which is where my biological father and my stepmother and my two siblings on that side live in Toronto. Or Brampton, just outside of Toronto. And so we met for the first time at the Toronto airport and visited with them for a few days. And then they came to Montreal to the Jazz Fest with us as well. And that was the beginning of the relationship back in the day.
Well, what would you say that you've learned about yourself through having that relationship?
Well, I'm very
come
similar.
Into your life?
What I've learned is that the things that you think are so unique to you, it's like, I appear to be like a carbon copy of my biological father. This is so bizarre, That certain things were so similar, and that was odd, to meet a human I did not grow up with. I was not like the things that really are, there's always the conversation of nature and nurture. And it did make me understand that there is a strong dose of the nature that is beyond whatever nurturing happens or doesn't happen, that is a part of who we are as human beings. In that way, I think learning as much as we can about our ancestors is of value to anybody, because they really are alive in us.
Yeah.
We really are carrying them forward.
Hey, friends, one of the things we've learned from listeners is that many of you don't want to just listen to these conversations. You'd like to go deeper than that. That's part of why we created NSC Plus, which is our subscriber community, where we share additional conversations, reflections, and bonus material connected to the themes of the show, especially looking for ways that this can relate to the practice of your own life. Recently, we started a new series called Reflections on a Good Life, in which I share brief reflections arising from some of our favorite NSC interviews. You might think of it as a weekly 7-minute episode in which I pull out some pearl of wisdom from an interview and suggest a question on which you might choose to meditate to further cultivate some goodness in your own life. We've also launched a new bonus series called Books You Should Know, In the first installment, I sat down with Dr. Lee Warren for a conversation that quickly became one of my favorite interviews I've done in quite a while. It's all waiting for you over at NSE Plus. And just as importantly, NSE Plus is what helps keep No Small Endeavor on the air and available for free to everyone. Subscriptions start at just $5 a month, and if these conversations have been meaningful to you, we would truly love to have you join us. You can learn more at nosmallendeavor.com or click the link in the show notes and join NSE Plus. Starting something new is hard and honestly can be terrifying. When we started No Small Endeavor, there were plenty of what ifs. What if no one listens? What if it doesn't work? But sometimes the thing worth doing is precisely the thing that requires you to take a leap. And if you're starting a business, Shopify helps make that leap a little less daunting. Shopify, the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S. Hundreds of ready-to-use templates. Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store that matches your brand style. And you can also get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you with email and social media campaigns. If you get stuck, Shopify is always around to share advice with their award-winning 24/7 customer support. It's time to turn those what ifs into with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/NSE. Go to shopify.com/NSE. That's shopify.com/NSE.
And we're live on match day as Doug reaches for a buffalo wing. He's got it. Oh, and he's gone for a can of Pepsi too. What a finish. There's no doubt about it. It just tastes better. Match days deserve Pepsi.
So I have a friend who just in the last, I think, 2 years was reconnected with her biological family. And she was telling me recently that one of the things that she surprisingly has had to deal with was asking the what if question. That is, what if I had been raised in this family versus where I was raised?
Oh, yeah.
And she had a relatively very good experience with her adoptive family. But there were still questions that she was asking once she encountered her biological family of saying, this could have been really a sweet gift to get to do that. I don't know. Have you had to process any emotions around that?
You know, I now and then I've thought of it, but I have such I think we just have to accept that all of our experiences are part of who we are. And there's not really, we would be a different person, you know. The what if question is interesting for sure, but I think I think I've been more on a path of accepting that all of my history is a part of who I am. And I think when you've had, those of us who survive chronic abuse in childhood, it can go differently. You can be running from it your whole life, which often leads to self-medicating in really destructive ways and destructive behaviors. I think I've gone the opposite way of really clinically almost remembering things in great detail and trying to face them head on. And accept that everything that happened is a part of who I am now. Not that it should have happened, but it did happen. And so that's just part of who I am now, you know? And I don't think I would throw away my entire life as it has been lived to have this what if, you know, in a sense. Like there's part of it, but I get that, of course. How could you not? And my biological father is this lovely, wonderful, calm, gentle man, you know. He's the total opposite of my adoptive father, who is violent and brutal and unself-aware and all of the things, you know. So yes, of course, on paper and in all worlds, it would have been better to be raised by the nonviolent person. But we are more than the sum of our experiences, but the sum of our experiences is a part of who we are.
Yeah.
And maybe I wouldn't be able to appreciate them as much as I do now if I had just grown up with them. It's such a gift to meet a parent as an adult because you get to know them more. We have there's many parallels sort of in the different, but things that we can really relate to with what they went through, surviving the U.S. coup of Grenada in the late 70s, in the early 80s. Reagan and the CIA invaded Grenada because Castro had helped fund a commercial airport, in Grenada. It wasn't for fighter jets. It was commercial airplanes. But that was in the Cold War, and that was seen as provocation enough, I guess, for an invasion and a coup. And the assassination of Maurice Bishop, who was, when my father was younger, he was this very idealistic member of that New Jewel Party, and really saw Maurice Bishop as bringing this new hope and life to Grenadians on the island. And they had the trauma of losing everything, losing their home, he was beaten up in front of my sister and my baby brother and thrown in jail and lost his job. And, he was part of the Socialist Democratic Party, and that was considered criminal after the invasion, and they left everything because they came to Canada and they had to start over. Her teaching degree wasn't recognized, so she had to start a whole new career. And my stepmother went into nursing instead. She just couldn't bear to do all of the teacher training over again,
When you said a moment ago that, when you face abusive, violent childhood, the two choices you enumerated there are self-medication in various ways, or facing your experience head on and beginning to ask questions about it.
Yeah, and of course there's more than two choices, but I have observed that it often goes when one tries to suppress it, it often turns into just intensely self-harming, avoidant behaviors. So,
were you ever tempted with the self-medication route?
Sure, in a way. Certainly in my early band years in my 20s, I was definitely drinking too much and that kind of thing, which is also attendant to learning how to say no when someone offers you a drink when you're part of the band. But yes, certainly, I'd have my own struggles and ups and downs with that. But for me, the self-medication was the music, really. And luckily, that's a fairly, it's a less harmful
of ones to choose. It's a pretty great one to choose. Yeah,
it's a less harmful habit. I ran away with the circus, and I just kept running. So, but I also wrote, I think songwriting for me was and continues to be really cathartic and has been a way to process.
Yeah.
The pain of that history.
Right. Which brings us to Outside Child, which you mentioned a moment ago. So this book, describe that. I think I read that was like a very intense 4-day recording session or something.
Yeah, we did it in 4 days. So it's funny. It was not intended to be a recording session in a sense. I had been given a grant by the Canada Council for the Arts. It was a writing grant, actually an exploratory grant, but it was exactly enough money to pay for 4 days at Sound Emporium, which is a wonderful Cowboy Jack Clement's old place that's now run by the fabulous Juanita Copeland.
Yes.
And many great records have been recorded there, and including the fabulous Brittany Howard and Alabama Shakes, Sound and Color, and An Outside Child, among others. But we had exactly enough money for 4 days there. And our friend Dan Nobler, wonderful producer here in town, he, the son-in-law of the great Roseanne Cash, his beautiful wife, Carrie Crowell, anyway, they're magical people. And Dan was producing the record, and we had 4 days, and we thought, we can knock out 11 songs in 4 days. And we did. And then we had 1 day of overdubs at his old studio, Goosehead Palace. And that was Outside Child. And we didn't, at the time, I was thinking of it as like a demo or something. I'm just making a demo because I was very reluctant to step into my own name and story fully. And it wasn't until that was in 2019. I remember we recorded it right around Americana Fest in 2019 because so many of our friends were in town that I wanted to have come sing or play on it. So like Ruth Moody sang on it and Yola sang on it, and different friends came and guested in. And everyone was in town for Americana Fest, and it was just a lovely, fun time. And I didn't think much about it. At the time I was touring with Birds of Chicago, which was my partner, which is my group with my project with my partner, JT. And it was the lockdown that forced us to stop, of course, as it forced everyone to stop. I remember we had been out opening for the Wood Brothers on the West Coast, and we were headed toward Kirkland, Washington, which happened to be the epicenter of an outbreak of the virus on the West Coast. And I remember we got the call, okay, we're shutting down the tour, and we all got on planes. We all found flights out of Eugene, Oregon. I remember because the Portland airport was slammed and like basically overrun. And so we went to Eugene and took flights from there back to Nashville. And that was the beginning of the lockdown, March 13th, 2020. I'll never forget it. We were living at the time in Rhiannon Giddens' house in Madison, Tennessee. It was a place that she got while she was on that Nashville show. And it was our little family, JT and Ida and I, my ex-girlfriend Anna and Yola were in lockdown together at Rhiannon's place. She was on the other side of the Atlantic in Ireland. And that was the beginning of, remember it was like, it'll be a week, it'll be a month, and a year into it, we're like, well, we have this record. Like, so let's try and do something with this record to, keep the lights on and the food in the fridge. And
so you still had not released the record?
Into it. No.
Oh, okay.
I got sort of backed into shopping it around in the pandemic out of desperation, frankly. And then we got, through the good auspices of Brandi Carlile, she introduced us to Margie Chesky and the good people at Fantasy Concord Records. And I ended up getting signed, over Zoom in the middle of a lockdown.
Amazing, yeah.
And when the world started coming back in real life in 2021, we began touring, and then that record was shockingly well received. And I do think part of why it was well received is that we were in the midst of processing trauma collectively, globally. And so a record about, it's not about trauma, it's about finding community in music and escaping trauma thereby. I think it was maybe better received than it would have been in any other circumstance because of just the way everyone was sort of going inward and
it seems that you've
pondering more deeply.
Yeah, it seems that you've said kind of consistently that the album was not about trauma, but as much as maybe the journey out of it, right? What's it meant for you to? I mean, did you know when you were recording the album, this is me claiming agency, or
no.
How did you think about that, or how did that unfold?
No, when we were recording the album, it was just joyful. It was like, these are songs that my partner and I, JT, had written and co-written. I started writing those songs I was doing a tour with a group called Our Native Daughters, which is Rhiannon Giddens, Amethyst Kia, Layla McCalla, and myself. We had done a record called Songs of Our Native Daughters for Smithsonian Folkways, just as a one-off. What we thought of as a very nerdy project, like our four women with banjos, and all the songs had to start on the banjo. There had to involve a banjo, but somehow this project really connected with people, and we got like 5-star review in the Guardian and a huge article in Rolling Stone, and it was the first time anyone had ever taken my songwriting seriously. Was that project. It was interesting, like getting reviewed about writing. And we did a crazy tour with all 6 of our children. There's Rhiannon's 2, Layla's 3, and my one Ida. Ida's early childhood education, Linden Waldorf teacher, Miss Molly, came on this tour because she is heroic and brave. To turn the kids into a little Waldorf class on the bus. These derelict buses that we had that probably should have been retired in the late 70s and somehow were limping down the road. And we culminated at the Newport Folk Fest in 2019 on this tour. But on that tour, I started writing the songs from Outside Child, and JT started simultaneously. He was on a writer's retreat in New Hampshire, and he was, we realized we were like, that we were writing these songs together. And so it was joyful. The process of recording Outside Child was this joyful, cathartic, wonderful thing. But I didn't think of it as I'm stepping into my own name and agency yet. I had to be forced to that by the deprivation of the pandemic and the desperation of like, how are we going to provide for our kid? Because we didn't have savings to see us through, 3 weeks, let alone 3 months, let alone a year. Like we were, as it turned out, working poor and thinking that we were better off than we actually were, which I think a lot of us discovered how close to food and housing insecurity we actually are in the pandemic. A lot of illusions ripped away during the pandemic, and sadly other ones created. I think about all of the kind of hype, the way that the psychological warfare of what was going on online in that time, the kind of like, we've seen the evolution of QAnon into the far right today. We've seen the kind of the eroding of people's trust or even ability to discern what's factual from what's propaganda and what's fake and what's AI and what's, bots just pushing them to be the worst versions of themselves. It's like, it's fascinating how much that all the petri dish of the lockdown and how that, I don't know, the whole process was sped up. I don't think we're going to know for years the full fallout, to be honest.
First time this is only the second time we've ever spoken to each other face to face. Haven't known each other a long time. But I think one of the things that is so striking to me about you is that how you seem to have chosen joy. And like even what you said a moment ago about, this choice between self-medication or facing it, seems to be a space that makes at least space for joy. But it seems that you've been very proactive about cultivating joy. And then even as you go into your next album, The Returner, it seems to be this simultaneously acknowledgement of pain in various ways throughout the album, and yet claiming joy. How'd you get to that, or what's that looked like for you, or how do you think about that, or maybe better, how do you practice that personally?
I think they always coexist, and I think that's the gift, that's the gift of that. None of us is getting through this mortal life, this brief mortal life, without experiencing a lot of pain and trauma. That's just part of it. Being born is painful and scary and hard, and that's part of why we don't remember it, I'm sure. But we're going to die. Like, we're all going to die. We know this. But we have this brief and glorious time on this living planet, the only living planet that we know of in the entire universe, which, whatever our belief system, that is a remarkable and magical fact of the only life that we know of for sure in the universe, And we are here, and it's so improbable and amazing. And like, it's so joyful. And we know, all of us do, like, we're born being able to experience extreme joy. Like, we just, all kids, the wonder of it, the wonder of our own hands, the wonder of the world around us. We are born knowing that that's inherently joyful and thrilling. Like, we know that from early days, And I think I've been lucky in that because music has been the thread that carries me through, and that has been my primary mode of expression my whole life, that it reinforces that as well. It's sort of an antidote to, completely wallowing in despair, And so I've been very lucky in that way. And then music has led me to such good people, and to such loving, caring, uplifting people, And so then I was able to understand early and deeply that it didn't have to be the way it was in my family. Like that was a choice too. One didn't have to choose to live that way. Could choose to live a different way. And so, yes, I think you just go toward what feels better, you know? And I think that's all. I've followed my ears and I've followed my intuition, and I've gone toward what makes me feel hopeful and what makes me feel. And then, of course, then becoming a mom, I have to try to keep choosing joy and hope. Because I don't, James Baldwin taught us long ago, all the children are our children, whether there are physical, he never had physical children, but he knew he never had children of his own body, so to speak, biological children, but he very much felt responsible. He knew that all the grownups on the planet were parenting all the babies on the planet and that we're responsible for them, and having my own, going through motherhood, carrying her and birthing her and has reinforced that even more for me. I always recognized it and felt it before, but it did for me go to a different level with the physical experience of motherhood. Now it really behooves me to find the joy and to live it and to model it, because, James Baldwin also said they and this is I'm poorly misquoting probably, but they may not listen to us, but they see what we do and they will copy it, they will. Yeah. So I just think, I think part of it too is when I was living in Vancouver and working at the Portland Hotel Society, we were housing agency that housed those we were considered low threshold, meaning the folks that we housed were dual diagnosis, had a mental health diagnosis and an addiction. And often it was, we were the only stability often in some of their lives. And it was a real community. And the guiding principle was harm reduction. It wasn't about, there was certain housing where people couldn't, if they were using, they would get kicked out. If they were, not adhering to whatever the religious denomination was, they would get kicked out. If it was our housing was everybody deserves a home no matter what, and that so-called low threshold, meaning what I think is a basic human principle of everybody deserves a place to live and to be safe in that place. And it was transformative for me to work there I got hired when I was 18 or 19, so I was one of the youngest people they'd ever hired. And they hired me because of my family experience, because of what I had lived in my own family. My mom is schizophrenic and has battled with substances her whole life and, been sort of unable to stay on medication her whole life. And so I had this lived experience that would help me treat our residents as human beings, And so I got hired. And that job for me was, first of all, stability, financial stability, which I'd never had. I was able to, in that time when I was working that job, I charged my adoptive father. My baby brother came to live with me. He finished his schooling with me. It stabilized my life to work there. And it also made me understand, it just deeply ingrained the principle of harm reduction in my mind, we don't do each other or ourselves any favors by having reactive, harsh judgments or assuming. It is not enabling someone to make sure they have a safe home. It is saying you're a human being and you deserve loving kindness because you're a human being, whatever else is going on in your life, and you deserve a place to live. Like, I personally don't want to be part of a society that thinks it's okay for people to die on the street, and I think most of us don't actually. And we get tricked into believing that it's somehow harmful to take care of each other. Like in the US, people are so terrified of the word socialism, right? Or anything that smacks of, oh, we're giving handouts, but it's not handouts. There's a tiny percentage of our population that for various reasons need extra help. And we have all the resources and I think all the will to give that extra help. And I think most people do, and it's just a matter of figuring out how to find the common ground to do that collectively. Whatever the terminology is, we could change the terminology. And, there's so many interesting, I've been trying to understand and learn more about that. When Covenant happened here, I went with a group of folks down to the Capitol it was Amy Grant and Sheryl Crow, Margot Price, Will Hoge, Ruby Amanfu, Sarah Baer, myself, a couple of others, just to speak with all the lawmakers, both Republican and Democrats. And it was so fascinating, like things like around, even if something like gun control and the terminology, like if you say, I can't remember, what was it? There was almost all Americans agree that we should have stricter rules around who can buy a firearm. But there's like semantics of it where if someone leans Republican, they will reject it if you say it one way. And if someone leans Democrat, they will reject it if you say it another way. And it's literally like finding the language that will make it clear that what we're talking about is making sure guns stay out of the hands of people with prior offenses or serious mental health conditions where they won't be in control of themselves with a firearm, right? And they will be at much higher risk of doing harm to themselves and to other people. It's so, anyway, there are so many forces currently with the way negativity bias works in our own brains and online. Negativity bias online is rewarded. It's clickbait. It is overrepresented online. And to me, it is a distortion. It is not the reality actually of who we are, but it appears to be. Like you would not be faulted for assuming that it is if you just kind of like took a glance online at any time. It's like this it's like a funhouse mirror. And I think part of what I'm so addicted to with live performance in various ways is that in real life, we can't fall prey to that. When we are it's like the show we did the other day, we are feeling things in real life. We are speaking to one another in real life. There's no way for it to be distorted. We experience it as it is. And we feel each other as we actually are. And it's extremely difficult to dehumanize someone that you're sitting face to face with. It's really easy to dehumanize someone online or through, remotely.
Yeah.
As we've seen, people will say and behave in ways online that they never would in real life. Never, ever, you know? And it's a skewed distortion and it's a bad habit. And we can break bad habits, Like everybody used to smoke. Now very few people smoke because we learned that it's really harmful, People there didn't used to be such thing as seatbelts. And then when seatbelts were introduced, there was massive protests against seatbelts. But now most people wear a seatbelt. And I do think it can be the same with our online culture. Like now it's still the norm to say horrific things to other people online and behave badly. But, in 20 years, we'll look back and go, oh, I can't believe we used to be like that, hopefully. We can modify and change. We can apply the principle of harm reduction to whatever it is we're doing,
So within the last year or two, you were nominated in the state of Tennessee for a very prominent recognition. You and another musician.
Haley Williams and I. Who's from Paramore. Yeah. We had both won Grammys at the 66th Grammy Awards.
Yes.
And it's a thing where I can't remember what it's called. Like I shouldn't.
Some sort of formal recognition from the state of Tennessee government.
They didn't want to recognize
from the legislature, and they didn't want to recognize
They didn't like the name, the song that was nominated. Sorry. It's so terrible to laugh because it's not funny, but it also is funny. The song that won the Grammy for me was called "Eve Was Black." And there was an interview that I saw where Faison was like, I didn't like that name. And I'm sorry for laughing, but it's just it's so silly that it was. Anyway, but what was funny, the funniest thing to me about it was because it was this sort of odd, we're not going to recognize that one. That became this thing, where it took on its own life, and I ended up going on Good Morning America and talking about this. I mean, it was so surreal. It was so surreal. And I just thought, y'all, this is backfired if what you were hoping was to repress my presence in this state, because I've now literally gone on Good Morning America to talk about this song and Haley Williams.
I mean, this is one of the things that's so beautiful to me about silly. You. I mean, it's that you're laughing about it. Oh, were you laughing about it all along, or only once you went on Good Morning America?
I had met all those lawmakers. I had met all those lawmakers when we were going to the Capitol after the Covenant shooting. And they were all very cordial. And I have to say that a number of them remarked to both Ruby and I, who were the only two Black people there, how well-spoken we were, and this was the way to get things done, and let's be decorous, and Ruby and I were laughing about it, but I just think sometimes people need to get out of their little sandbox and play with some other kids and get to know some other kids, and then they won't be so scared, It's so silly.
Yeah.
It's so silly. And I'm sure none of them listen to the song, which is fine. You don't have to. But the idea that just the title. I
mean, it's also ironic, right?
That would make them run off to the hills screaming.
It's ironic that Eve Was Black is obviously this kind of masterful confrontation of white supremacy, at least at one part of what it's doing, and then it seems to encounter that.
It's also like my white family. My mother's white. Half my family are white supremacists. I can't get away. It's also in me. I can't I'm not saying it's the opposite. It's the opposite of what someone might assume.
Yeah.
It is saying we are actually one human family, and mitochondria doesn't lie, and DNA doesn't lie, and the human genome has been mapped, and the human species did arise in the continent we now call Africa. That is just science and that is our human genealogy that none of us can escape from, and that also could be a source of bringing us together, right, should we acknowledge it fully, right? And I think there's such fear and such ignorance, and in the I don't know, in their case, I can't make assumptions. I don't know what it is. It's such a pitched. I truly don't know. I can't imagine. But there is an element of comedy in it to me, of what are you afraid of?
Right.
Honestly, what are you afraid of? And it's it also was something that no one would have known about it or cared about it if they hadn't blocked it.
Right.
Their blocking it is the thing that blew it up. You know?
Yeah.
Which there's an irony and a lesson in that too.
Yeah.
That which you repudiate is what you end up amplifying.
Right.
So often, right? And that happens. We see that online. When people are so mad about something online that's the only thing that's trending.
Right.
And you're so mad about it, and you're actually helping amplify it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I really try to practice, both online and in real life, is rather than being so furious about the things that feel outrageous, digging in on what I can do that makes a tiny bit of difference for the better. And that's not to say ignoring everything, or that we pretend iniquities and injustices and violence and horrible things aren't happening. We know they are happening. But the point is, what are little things we can do to chip away at that and to shift the balance?
Right.
And I'm much more interested in figuring that out. What little things can I do every day to shift the balance
Yeah.
And what can I amplify that I actually believe in? Not just what am I against? What am I for?
Yeah.
What am I for and how can I amplify it? And let's not waste our energy and our time on amplifying what we're against. We know what we're against. It's like comical villainy at this point, some of it. A lot of it is, to me, comical villainy. And what is the point of railing about it publicly other than it amplifies that, I am really interested in what do we do? How do we amplify what the antidotes to it, right? And it's hard.
Yeah.
It's very, very, very hard.
Now, do I understand correctly that another sort of complication that has informed your own approach to thinking about the things you were just talking about is that you realize that your, was it adoptive father or foster father was also abused as a child?
My adoptive father, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I mean, almost all abusers were abused, right? That's a statistical fact. And I think therein can be the seeds for compassion and for forgiveness. Forgiveness is so tricky and so hard, but I actually think it's the only way to free ourselves from that wheel, that cycle, that endless cycle of abuse. And I don't mean forgiveness as a form of not holding people accountable but really I had to let go of fury and anger. It was just making me sick. It wasn't, it wasn't for him. It was for me to let go of it, to move forward, to live my life, and when I left home, I know what it feels like to want to do violence to someone. I wanted to kill that man. I really did. But if I had killed that man, we wouldn't be sitting here talking. I wouldn't be a mother. I wouldn't be writing songs. I'd be rotting in a jail somewhere. And he would have won, my life would be as miserable as his. So turning away from violence, I'm not saying it as some kind of I don't mean it in any kind of Pollyannish way. I mean, it's like survival. If we don't break those cycles, if we fall into vengeance, if we live by vengeance, then there is only premature death and misery and violence in store for us. And there's no way to free ourselves of that cycle if we partake in vengeance, if we do what was done to us.
Yeah. I mean, going back to what you were saying a moment ago about villainizing, I think I also read, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I also read something to the effect that you had indicated that even the language that we might use of someone that does atrocious things, to call someone a monster, for example.
Yeah, people aren't monsters.
Yeah, that robs us of our own agency.
Yeah.
Which I think that's very helpful. But unpack that for us a bit more.
And I think it also robs us of truth, of self-knowledge, that everybody is capable of horrific acts. Everybody is. Whether we do them or not. This is I think we have to dig in on specifics. What stops someone? What stops someone from doing the horrific thing? We need to learn more about that. What are the ways that we shore up our spirit, psyches, beings, whatever you want to call it, to not succumb to the worst of our natures? How do we keep the better angels ascendant? The specifics of it, and for me, I strongly identify art and having the release and the succor and the refuge of art, at any given stage of my whole life, including now, has kept me from ever kind of falling into the worst possible scenario, and it might be different things for different people, but I think art is a big one for humanity in general. There's a reason that we call the humanities, there's a reason for it. And you don't have to become a professional artist for it to be of value in your life, to learn to express oneself musically or to journal, to write down, to when you're whatever is bubbling up that feels overwhelming, to write it down rather than acting upon whatever those big feelings are,
Yeah.
Can be huge. Like I can bet that any of the school shooters weren't actively journaling. And if they had been, maybe they wouldn't have been a school shooter. They're like, so many of them are like very young boys or men, right? In transition of huge flux metamorphosis of puberty. Lord knows what else is going on, but like, there's statistical things that are clear about violence in our culture that we need to dig in on specifically to start figuring out how to break the cycle.
Yeah.
We really do. And it just doesn't, like the kind of they're a monster talk doesn't help anything, because they're not. That's a human being that might have committed a monstrous act, but that's still a human being. And now we have to figure out what causes one human being to do that and what stops another from doing it. And how do we shore up what stops us from doing it?
Two relatively quick questions as we close. One, I wonder what sort of daily practices, you mentioned journaling, but what kind of daily practices keep you grounded, keep you hopeful, keep you practicing harm reduction in the world?
Movement is huge, and going outside, we're here in East Nashville, and I take our rescue dog Millie to Shelby Bottoms every single day. And we will, particularly while I've been excavating this memoir, I've been doing a lot of dictation while walking. Movement for me is huge for the creative process as well, like both songwriting and book writing. So I will take Millie sometimes for, 11 miles, 15 miles through the Greenway and the Shelby Bottoms. And there's nothing to me more restorative, limbic system calming, cortisol reducing, serotonin boosting than just walking through nature and remembering and feeling and breathing and being a part of it. Like, we're part of it. We're not above it.
Yeah.
We're part of it, And I think when we don't get enough sun, we're like plants too.
Right.
If we don't get enough sun and we don't get enough air and movement, like, we suffer, and we suffer physically. There's physical ailments that are very common from over sedentariness, right? And back things that people get from hunched over their computer all day long. So movement, I've practiced yoga for 20 years, which has been really grounding and important to me. I'm a runner. I do distance running because that calms my monkey brain down, makes it shut up for a second, the constant, when you can't find peace between your own ears, just go for a run till it calms down. Yeah. Yeah. So definitely, definitely daily movement.
The show that we got to do together, No Small Endeavor Live at the Scrimmorn Symphony Hall here in Nashville back the Sunday night before last Thanksgiving, was wonderful to have you. And I was listening back through mixes of that here recently. And the two moments I teared up listening to those mixes, one was, you've done a lot of shows since then, but you may not remember that you invited several of us to sing with you on Requiem.
Yes.
And we had a big choir behind us, but you asked Amazing. 3 or 4 of us also to kind of sing on the chorus of that. And it's such a moving song. So much of what we've talked about today is in that song, especially holding together deep sorrow and joy and the grief and yet hopeful possibilities. Yeah. And I don't know if you know that during that performance on stage, I was choking up and couldn't hardly sing, and with tears running down my face, because it's such a beautiful, powerful anthem for us, and I just thank you for it. And the other occasion when I teared up was listening to the mixes. We always, for 20 years now, we've done this old spiritual, The Welcome Table. Yeah. As the last song in those big shows, and of course we did that night. Yeah. And you singing the last 2 choruses, which was just so delightful. And I don't know, there was something about that beautiful moment and the resonance of all of that, and what that song means, I think, where we're all longing to be welcomed, aren't we? Absolutely. And we're all longing to sit down with each other. Yeah. And to know what it means to be human together. Yeah.
To be welcome, to belong.
Yeah. And but that seems to be central to kind of what you're helping us with.
Well, I think that's the work that we're all called to do, like embodied in this brief time here on this planet, is figure out how to be together.
Yeah.
In better and better ways.
Yeah. And with the dogs too.
And with the dogs too. Yeah.
Well, thank you. It's been delightful to be with you. And thank you for your good work in the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on your show.
And thank you for having us to your home.
It's my pleasure.
LinkedIn Hiring Pro can't predict the future, but it can help you feel confident about future hires. Because Hiring Pro combines real-time insights and candidate data from the LinkedIn network with the criteria you've set for your role to deliver you a list of top-fit candidates. Businesses who use LinkedIn are 24% less likely to reopen a role in the next 12 months. Hire right the first time with LinkedIn Hiring Pro. Post a free job today at linkedin.com/quality.
This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast, which means you're probably multitasking. Maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
Thanks to all the stellar team that makes this show possible. Christy Bragg, Jacob Lewis, Carriot Harmon, Jason Sheasley, Sophie Byard, Kate Hayes, Mary Evelyn Brown, and Audrey Griffith. Our theme song was composed by Tim Lauer. Our music director for the performance you're hearing now was Simon Martinson. Thanks for listening, and let's keep exploring what it means to live a good life together. No Small Endeavor is a production of Tokens Media, LLC, and
Great Feeling Studios.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
A burst pipe. A dead water heater. The AC calling it quits. Who do you call? HomeServe is an easy way to handle unexpected home repairs, with plans covering stuff basic homeowners insurance usually won't. Instead of scrambling for a contractor, you make one call to get the repair process started. Join the millions of customers who trust HomeServe right now. Go to homeserve.com/podcast for 50% less your first year. That's homeserve.com/podcast. Savings compared to renewal price, void in Florida.